Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about the altcoin market, and we're just going to provide a bit of discussion about it. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. I had a little note for myself to at least acknowledge whenever Total 3 put in a higher high. We always knew this day would come, of course, but the general argument was that for a long time, the altcoin market was doing nothing more than putting in lower highs. And you can see it was just one lower high after another. And I want to be, open and honest, right? This is in fact a higher high. There's no denying it. There's no discounting it. There's just nothing more than just acknowledging that this is in fact the first higher high that the altcoin market has achieved essentially since November of 2021. So it is at least sort of a milestone within the altcoin market. And so a lot of people are wondering, well, what does that ultimately mean? My sort of argument has, for the last 2 years, right? For the last 2 years, my argument has been that crypto exposure should be limited to Bitcoin, right? Mostly limited to Bitcoin. And the reason has, and for me, continues to be the argument that Bitcoin dominance is heading higher, right? So if you believe that Bitcoin dominance is heading higher, which again, doesn't necessarily have to be true, right? But it's been true so far. And if you believe that Bitcoin dominance is heading higher, then the general argument has been, for the last 2.5 years, that altcoins would just bleed back to Bitcoin. And we've seen that, right? We've seen that time and time again with the fact that Bitcoin dominance has continued to put in higher lows and higher highs. So while Total 3 has just now put in its first higher high, it is worth noting that Bitcoin put in its first higher high, way back over here, right? A long time ago, back in January. Back in January is when Bitcoin put in its first higher high, and it took almost another year for Total 3 to do the same. And one of the things that we've said many times is that if Bitcoin, basically what happens in the various parts of the market cycle, right? Bitcoin leads the bull market, right? So if Bitcoin is going to go higher, if the cryptocurrency asset class as a whole is going to go higher, then Bitcoin will lead the bull market. And if Bitcoin leads the bull market, then Bitcoin dominance goes up. And if Bitcoin dominance goes up, then altcoins bleed back to Bitcoin. That's the argument. And if it's not on path to go to new all-time highs, then Bitcoin protects you. It minimizes your downside risk, right? It gives you exposure to the upside of crypto while minimizing your downside risk in the altcoin market. Now, of course, recently altcoins have popped off quite a bit, right? I mean, there's, you can see that a lot of them have moved well off their lows. Polkadot is now at, about $6 or so. Link's at around $15. Avalanche is at almost $21, and so on and so forth, right? Matic's at 90 cents. XRP's at 64 cents, ADA's at 37 cents, and so on and so forth, right? So a lot of these things on a regular scale. So a lot of these you can see have in fact sort of broken out of this trend that they were previously in. It's a fact, right? It's a fact. So I do at least want to acknowledge that. Now, in terms of what does that mean for an investing portfolio? The first thing I will say again is that what's right for you is probably not what is right for someone else. So if you want to take on the risk of the altcoin market and that's right for you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for someone else. Or if someone else doesn't want to take on the risk, that doesn't mean that someone else shouldn't, right? There's always a different risk tolerance for everyone. The thing that I go back to, right, that I constantly go back to, I have to ask myself with Bitcoin dominance, has it broken the structure? Has it? And despite the fact that Total 3, right, despite the fact that Total 3 has in fact despite the fact that Total 3, the altcoin market, has put in a higher high, what you will in fact notice is that Bitcoin dominance has not broken the trend, right? At least not yet. Now, if you're new to this channel, again, the argument that I've had for a long time is that we are just entering into a long period where the Bitcoin dominance will trend higher. And you can see that we have had a low, then a high, and then a higher high, or sorry, a higher low, a higher high, and then another higher low, another higher high, and so on and so forth, right? The same pattern just keeps repeating. A series of higher lows and higher highs in Bitcoin dominance, including stablecoins, that really started in September 2022. And if you exclude stablecoins, this trend started back in May of 2021. A series of higher highs and higher lows for the Bitcoin dominance. So it's not to say that altcoins on their USD pairs can never go up. We know that they can. They've had plenty of great rallies over the last 2.5 years. It's just that a lot of them have been bleeding on their Bitcoin pairs. And until Bitcoin dominance changes this trend, then there's no clear and obvious answer that they're done bleeding. I think that's the hard part, right? Everyone wants to know, where do altcoins ultimately bottom out against Bitcoin? Or where does the Bitcoin dominance top? I can't tell you how many people at every single high said that that is where Bitcoin dominance topped. And then you fast forward a few more months and then Bitcoin dominance is just going on another run. And the reason is, as we've seen, every time Bitcoin goes up, every time the price of Bitcoin USD goes up, the dominance goes up, right? I mean, basically all these rallies that we've seen in Bitcoin dominance corresponded to Bitcoin USD going higher. So if Bitcoin leads the bull market, right? If you assume that there's two scenarios here, Bitcoin leads the bull market, Bitcoin dominance goes up. If there's the downside risk, then altcoins would go down on the USD pairs, but Bitcoin still gives you exposure to the upside. In terms of sort of the derivative metric of Bitcoin dominance that we've looked at a lot, it's total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin, and that's this chart. And this chart is the chart that, should help people identify the risk in the altcoin market, right? You sort of identify the risk in the altcoin market. We're currently at 45%, okay? We're currently at 45%. The bull market support band for this metric ranges from 45 to 46%, okay? So the risk to alt Bitcoin pairs is that they come down this way, right? That's the risk to alt Bitcoin pairs, is that while they might go up on their USD pair if Bitcoin goes up, they might not keep pace with Bitcoin if Bitcoin goes up too quickly. On the other hand, if Bitcoin goes down, then altcoins would likely go down on their USD pairs. So if you look at this chart and you look what happened last cycle, you'll see that the first test of this region at around that 40% level, we got a bounce. And then we got another bounce on the second test, right? I mean, the same thing over here, right? We've gotten a couple of bounces here off of this same level, right around 40% or so, plus or minus a couple percent. And what I think we have to pay attention to is what happens on alt Bitcoin pairs right here. So for the next month, what happens? Because you can see back over here, after the second bounce, it just got rejected by the bull market support band. So will it get rejected again? That's the question, right? Will it get rejected again? Because despite the fact that altcoins have rallied significantly recently, this still has not broken above the bull market support band. Remember, this drop here corresponded to a Bitcoin rally. It took a Bitcoin rally to break altcoins off of their Bitcoin support levels. That's what it took back then. I don't know what it will be now, but that's what it was back then. It was, in fact, a Bitcoin rally that took altcoins off of their Bitcoin support levels. And so there is still a chance that something like that plays out. Does that mean you should not invest in altcoins? Does it mean you should invest in altcoins? That is up to you. That is up to you. My argument has been for a long time, and I've said this for the last 2 years, is that altcoins can go lower in the pre-halving year even when Bitcoin doesn't. And they did. A lot of altcoins have. The other argument is that if the economy slows down, then altcoins get hit the hardest. Now, there's a chance that that still happens, right? But it clearly, I mean, it hasn't slowed down enough to have any negative, any material effect on the market just yet. And it might not. I mean, it might not. If it does play out, it could, it could be next month. It could be next week. It could be 3 months from now. It could be 9 months from now, right? No one knows. No one knows. But the point is that it's based on the risk tolerance that you want to take on, okay? And when I look at this, my assumption, my sort of my baseline assumption is to stick with the trend until proven otherwise, right? Stick with the trend until proven otherwise. A lot of times, people would be better off just riding the trend until proven otherwise, and then you sort of switch sides, right? Which is why until dominance, right? Until Bitcoin dominance breaks this trend, I'm going to assume it's going to keep going higher. Until it breaks the trend. I'm going to assume that it keeps going higher. Meaning I'm going to assume, whether it might be a faulty assumption or not, I'm going to assume that all Bitcoin pairs will still struggle. Any given month, they could bounce, right? But this is still a series of higher highs and higher lows. And December, normally a lot of Decembers we see Bitcoin dominance go up. So, I still look at Bitcoin. I mean, you can look at Bitcoin USD and say, well, I mean, if this thing keeps breaking to the upside, right? If this thing keeps going up, then how is the dominance not going to go up with it? Because every single time Bitcoin breaks out to the upside, dominance goes up. So if this gets another explosive move, dominance is going up. And if Bitcoin goes back down, let's say it goes back down to the bull market support band or something, then all USD pairs take a hit. So the purpose of this video, right? The initial purpose of this video is to come out and say, total 3 has put in a higher high. There is a chance that the trend is broken, right? There is a chance that, the trend is broken, right? But there's a chance that that means the market conditions are changing. But I still think that, that ultimately remains to be seen with Bitcoin dominance still putting in higher highs and higher lows. If you go back to last cycle, we had a sizable rally, which is interesting because it's actually playing out a little bit different this time, right? This rally here that we had did not go above the 2019 high, okay? So this rally that we've experienced today has already taken out the 2023 high, right? You can see that pretty clearly. But what's also interesting is that back then, while it did not take out the 2019 high, it did take out that Q3 high just before the collapse. What's also interesting is that this move, as impressive as it has been, it still has not taken out the Q3 high from 2022, which is, a few tens of billions higher than where we currently are today. So again, sort of repeat, this high took out the 2022 Q3 high, right? This pump, but it did not take out the 2019 high. So you could say it took out this one, but not this one. But in this case over here, it's taken out this one, but it hasn't taken out this one yet. So, here's an example where you put in a higher high and then it still bled down. But, there's no denying that, there's a similar market structure here, right? Where you go up and then you fade and then you rally, right? You go up, you fade, and then you rally. So that's where we are today. I just want to be as open and honest as I can. I'm not trying to hide around it. I'm trying to say, hey guys, this is a higher high, right? This is a higher high by the altcoin market on its USD pair. There's no denying that. There's simply no denying it. It's a higher high. You got to look at that, right? And start to question things. I also, just to keep myself honest, I go back and look at what they're doing on their Bitcoin pairs, and I try to figure out, right, have they turned the tide against Bitcoin? And I don't think there's an obvious case to be made that they have yet. It doesn't mean that they're not in the process of doing that, but I don't think there's an obvious case to say that they have. Because we are still below the bull market support band in regards to total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin. When you look at Bitcoin dominance, again, it is still above its bull market support band. And I always have to go back to those, right? I always have to go back to, where are all Bitcoin pairs? What is the Bitcoin dominance doing? And the Bitcoin dominance still looks like it's still in an uptrend at this point. Now, I get it, right? I mean, if this goes and puts down a lower low, then clearly the tide is shifting. But I don't see any compelling case just yet to say that that is like set in stone and definitive. Of course, there's going to be a million people out there that are going to tell you that Bitcoin dominance is top. But I mean, they've been saying the same thing for 2.5 years. Yes, eventually they'll be right. And altcoins will turn the tide against Bitcoin. But I'm not convinced that that phase has occurred yet, right? I'm not. I guess what it would take to convince me would be, it'd take a lot of things. I would assume we would need looser monetary policy, but I think at the very least, you need to see the trend on dominance change, right? And that just, it hasn't happened yet. So from a risk-adjusted returns perspective, a Bitcoin-heavy portfolio, a Bitcoin-heavy crypto portfolio would still seem attractive because it gives you the potential upside in case Bitcoin breaks up, but it also minimizes the downside. Be that as it may, I can understand the allure of the altcoin market. When they're popping off 20% every other day, right? I get what, people, the FOMO feeling that comes, we're all very familiar with that feeling. But I get that feeling. But we still haven't seen them, durably change on their Bitcoin pairs just yet. Now, some of them have. There's certainly some altcoins that have. It's not like every altcoin is in the same downtrend on their Bitcoin pairs. It's just that collectively they have been. Collectively. And if you include Ethereum, and you go look at total 2 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin, that bull market support band is still up at 82 to 83%, and it's only at 79%. Ethereum has been weaker, right? There's no denying it. It doesn't mean that it's not going to pick up, but it has been weaker than a lot of the altcoin market, and it's one of the reasons why the Ethereum dominance keeps going down. Yes, it had a little bit of a rally, but the Ethereum dominance has basically been in a downtrend since June of 2023. And we said that this was likely going to happen, right? We said that Ethereum dominance was likely going to break to the downside here. So that's where we are today. Total 3 currently coming in at 420 billion. It is a higher high. The next major milestone, I suppose, would be around 450 billion. If Bitcoin rallies too quickly, then it could break altcoins down on their Bitcoin support levels. If Bitcoin pauses and doesn't do anything, then of course altcoins can rally, and so on and so forth. But I just wanted to provide a brief discussion on the altcoin market. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.